arrivati quasi alla fine, adesso tocca a Moritz Dill dell'Università di Friburgo e dell'Università di Lovanio, che ci parla di un'applicazione che ha dell'incredibile, se posso dire. È tutto a posto? Cioè...
No, non è... Un momento.
Flight Path Optimization at Tethered Airplanes for Airborne Wind Energy. Ah no, ma io mi sono sbagliato, perché ci sono due stampe. Siccome abbiamo avuto un blackout del Dipartimento di Matematica per 24 ore, alle 19:45 c'è Alessandro Didi, giusto? Giusto? Perché quello era il programma precedente che poi è saltato. C'è il programma che avete in mano. È domani che c'è il concerto rock.
Should I start? Okay. Yeah, so it's my great pleasure to be here. It's a wonderful conference until now, really exciting. I excuse myself for talking English. Maybe it's relaxing for those of you that, like I, don't speak Italian natively. And what I would like to talk about in the next half hour is airborne wind energy, which is a very exciting, a very unconventional field of engineering research. Can I use this microphone? I think this is working. So, possibly switch on this microphone. I think my microphone has not such a strong battery anymore, so I use this one. Okay. So let's just start. There's a strong political movement against nuclear power, and for example in Germany, the country where I come from, there is a decision to stop with nuclear power in 2023. And the question is, what should we do then? If you look at where Europe gets its electricity from, it's 80% from either nuclear power or from fossil fuels, that means coal or gas. So what can we do? So do we need to get back to coal? Burning coal. This is an old coal plant in Belgium that's not operated anymore. Should we start operating them again? We don't want to do that, of course. We all know that there's already too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. More than any time since humanity started to be on the globe. And if you look at the temperature curve, it's very well correlated with the CO2. So we know this causes global warming. And the polar ice caps are slowing and getting smaller and smaller. So this is surely not what we want. So let's have a look at what energy do we really need. So I find it a very interesting computation to think of what is each of us personal energy consumption. And if you think of a typical European, you can summarize the energy consumption as about 5 kilowatt. That's equivalent to 120 kilowatt hours per day, or something like 12 liters of fuel, petrol, that we burn per day. To get an idea of what these 5 kilowatt mean is while we are sitting here, each of us has basically switched on some of these heaters that we sometimes have on cold evenings in a restaurant, these strong heaters. Such a heater consumes about 5 kilowatt. That's what we consume from the moment that we are born until the moment that we die. Yeah, so there is a heater switched on for each of us all the time of our life. Basically, that's what a typical European consumes. A typical American or North American consumes about 10 kilowatt, I mean, as the whole society. So we are already a little bit better, but I think we cannot reduce that to very low levels, right? One interesting number in this context, which I was really astonished, is when you fly once from here to the US and back. It's a really interesting question how much energy we consume, and that's about 1,200 liters of kerosene, which is about 100 days of our average consumption. So it's a very bad for our, let's say, ecological footprint if we do long distance flights. But anyway, we do it, and this is all included in these 5 kilowatt. So on the other hand, what we really would like to have is a renewable energy, and if you look at where renewable energy can come from, then it's only sun and wind that really have the potential to satisfy all our needs. And if we look at how much the sun radiates on a nice day like today, it's about 1.3 kilowatt per square meter, and I will not bother you with too many numbers, but it's maybe interesting to remember this number. If you look over the average of how much energy is arriving on the ground in Europe, then basically to get our 5 kilowatt, we would only need 30 square meters. So 30 square meters for each of us would be enough to get the energy that we consume. That's good news, right? On the other hand, the disadvantages is these 30 square meters would not be enough because we cannot convert it all to use full energy. And also it's very difficult and costly to concentrate renewable energy. So the main problem with renewables is we need to somehow concentrate this energy. So let's start with solar cells, which is not the main topic, but I just want you to get a feeling of how thin this energy is. So they have an efficiency which makes that on average 1 square meter of solar cells produces only 18 watt. That's much less than the 5 kilowatts. So we would need about 300 square meter per person of solar cells in order to cover our energy needs. That's average European. In Italy it might be a bit less, but not much. So it's this surface per person. On the other hand, there's wind energy, and wind energy is something that grew enormously in the last years. So the largest turbines now that you find in the North Sea are about 6 megawatt per turbine, and on average over a year they produce maybe 1.5. So it's not all the time the best wind, so their average is 1.5 megawatt, but that's still enough for 300 people, so it's a lot. It's very efficient. And if you compare one of these wind turbines with the surface of solar cells that you would need, it's this surface of solar cells that you would need to replace one of these turbines. So it's an interesting technology for sure, and for this reason it grows steadily since about 1 or 2 decades, exponential growth. And the question of, if you look at it today, it's about 6% of Europe's energy production over the year. That's already something. But the question of my talk is if we could harvest wind power in a more efficient way. Could we make it even better? So if you look at, for one of these megawatts, you would need about 20 tons of wing material and 400 tons of foundations in the ground, in the sea. So these are the foundations, if you see them at the Belgian coast. And the question is if we could do this more efficiently. And that's where airborne wind energy comes in. And that's the topic of my talk. I have a short question. Is the acoustic quality okay? Also at the back. Is it okay? Yeah? Should I speak louder or not? Sorry? Okay, thanks. Great. Okay. So, a few facts about wind power which motivate us to do this type of research. So wind power grows cubically with the wind speed. That's something that is known. So if we have better wind, you get much more energy content in the air. So if you double the wind speed, you would get 8 times the energy flowing through a surface area. Yeah, that's quite impressive. On the other hand, if you go high, you know that there's more wind. And we can look at this statistically. If you look at histograms of how much wind speed, how often do we have a certain wind speed at a height of 100 meter, like such a small black turbine here, we have small wind speeds very often. If we would go 500 meter high, if we could do that, we would have very often quite high winds of 15, 20 meters per second. So it would be wonderful to build a high wind turbine. And so another fact about wind power is that unfortunately there is no wind power without force. So the interesting thing is when we take energy out of the wind, we need to put a force against the wind, and basically what we take out of the wind is the product of the wind speed and the force that we oppose against the wind. And that's of course exactly the same force that our turbine has to withstand. So there is no wind power without a force. And that makes it a bit unfortunate to build a high turbine if you think of this force that we need to put against the wind, and we want to build a turbine which is 500 meters high, for example. We are able to build buildings which are 500 meters high, so that's possible in principle. But to put a turbine on top, which is really large and harvests a lot of power, would make your building fall down. Yeah, it's just impossible, because you get an incredible bending moment, a torque here that will make your turbine fall. It's impossible. So let's look at how we could build such a turbine in a maybe better way. So the first thing is, it's probably a bad idea to put a stick up 500 meters high to put a force against the wind there, right? So what would we do to get this force more efficiently there? We would probably take some line, a cable, and connect it to the ground so that we can take this force in a more efficient way. And that means that we get rid of this torque. We have a force on this line, but the forces on lines are much easier to withstand than torques. And so now we still have this large tower, and this is a very strange construction, because if the wind speed would turn, we would need to turn the location of this tower, right? So let's try to get rid of the tower and have something like this. Now our wind turbine is up there, but the force is not in the right direction. Actually, it would fall down with this. So we need to turn it a bit. Yeah, just turn it a bit. And then the force is in the same direction as the line, and we could actually fly. And this is a bit like a kite. That's what we put into the sky at a line, right? So this is a way to get force up into the sky. We lose a bit of power because we have to turn, but we don't have to turn much if our angle is deep. And if the weight is not too high, what we have up here. So now I want to give you, so to say, our vision. So our vision is that we want to look at a wind turbine and only build the most efficient parts of the wind turbine. So we take away the middle part of the wing. We take away, maybe I should say that these wingtips are the most efficient parts of wind turbines, because they move so fast, they have a very strong influence on the wind field. Then we take away the generator, the tower, and we put the generator on the ground. And this is something we would like to build. And of course we need to transmit a force to the sky, and that means that we need to have some form of connecting cables that you might not see because they are so thin. But anyway, we need some way to get the force into the sky. So that's the vision that we have. That's not reality yet. But I want to show you and explain a bit what is done in this direction, and also what role mathematics can play in this context. So I hope I didn't bore you with the physics, the basic physics. There's one more interesting concept, and this is not very well known, I think. It's what we call the crosswind effect in this community. And there are actually different ways of how we could get the energy to the ground. So let's just summarize this video or our idea. So we want to build only the wingtips of a wind turbine. And the question is, why should this be efficient? And the most important thing that makes these things efficient is actually that our wingtips move quickly. So we need to somehow have a quick motion of this thing that is at the sky, which means that we need to put an airplane which flies fast circles around, so that it basically harvests this whole area. So that's what we call crosswind. It's flying very fast crosswind. But still there is an open question. So where should we place a generator? So that's a completely There is no use of this at the moment. It's just a toy. But there are two ways. And the first one is what we call drag mode. So drag mode means you put a little turbine on top of this kite. Sounds like a crazy idea. So you put a little wind turbine with a little generator on top of your big wing. But the interesting thing is, because you fly so fast, your wind turbine indeed needs to be much smaller for the same power. And the generator can also be much smaller because it turns so fast. So there's actually an advantage. You have a small fast spinning generator for enormous amounts of power. But the disadvantage is that you need quite high voltage cable power transmission through this cable. But this is a system that's built. I will outline that in a minute. But there's a more elegant way to transmit the power that I really like more, and which made me very excited when I found out about it first. And that is the second variant, and that's what we call lift mode. What we do here is we still fly with our kites fast circles in the sky. This produces, as I said before, an enormous force on the tether, but we can use this force exactly to roll out the tether. So we basically roll out the tether to drive a drum on the ground, which then drives a generator. Yeah? So you basically pull a load. That's what we do. And that means we spiral out, and at some point we need to invert the cycle in order to come back with our kite, and then we just change the angle of attack. We fly slower, and we go into what we call the retraction phase and fly towards the ground with a very small force, so we don't lose much energy. So the advantage is that we have now all the electric machinery on the ground. That's very nice. The disadvantage is that the speed of this rolling out and rolling in is relatively slow. So you need a relatively heavy machine, which is nearly as heavy as the machines on top of the towers of wind turbines. It's just down. So we don't get this advantage of very fast spinning electrical machines, which is good for the other variant. So to illustrate that a bit more pictorially, I show a picture that takes here a cable, a drum. Electricity is produced while this airplane makes some loops in the air. And at some point we fly back, and there is no tension on the tether, and we produce a little bit of, we lose a bit of power, but this is short and not by far not as much as we produce here. And so now I want to start. I'm an optimizer, actually a trained mathematical optimizer by my first education, and I want to come to path optimization of these airplanes later. But let's start with the first and very simple optimization problem in this context, and that's the question: how fast should we roll out in this phase? So if we do it too slow, then the generator will not turn and there's no power produced. But if we do it too fast, what will happen? The airplane will fall down, because it doesn't see relative wind anymore, right? So it's not driven by the wind anymore. So the question is, what roll-out speed is optimal? And if we look at the rolling out speed as a fraction of the wind speed from 0 to 1, if we roll out at the same speed as the wind, then of course the kite doesn't see any force, any wind, and there is no force on the line, and we have this green force curve. The force is maximum if we don't roll out. And if we multiply these two, power is force times speed. And if we multiply these two curves, we get this little polynomial of third order, which has its maximum at 1/3 of the wind speed. And so that's the optimal roll-out speed at which we would generate the maximum power. And if you do now a bit of physics, and use this result that I just mentioned, then you get a formula which many of the people in the field discovered independently, and then later on we found that it was derived in 1980 already by a smart engineer in California. So we call this Lloyd's formula. And that gives a relation of how much power a given wing area in a given wind field would produce. And this depends very strongly on this interesting number CL over CD, which we call the lift over drag ratio, and which is something like the aerodynamic efficiency of wings. For planes, it's something like the gliding number, it's called. So it's the amount of how much a sailing plane can go forward compared to sinking speed. Yeah. Typically, these numbers can be up to 60 for good sailplanes. So this is a big number. And if you put moderate numbers in this formula, then you can compute very easily that 1 square meter of wing surface, so 1 square meter of wing surface of such an airborne wind energy device could generate 40 kilowatt of power. Yeah? 40 kilowatt is a lot. Yeah? And this number is attracting a lot of people because we think this is really incredible. So we should try to get this way of concentrating wind power working. And so just to get a feeling of what this number is, it's much more than these solar cells would produce of 300 square meter. And if you make the computations and you assume that such an apparatus would maybe only operate 1/4 of the year at its full load, which is a realistic number, then you would still get 10 kilowatt out of 1 square meter over the year. And it would mean that for 2 Europeans, this wing area would basically be enough to get their whole energy needs delivered if this kite is flying all the time, of course, while they are living. So that's what attracts us. And so it attracts a lot of people, and the community is growing. This was the last of the yearly conferences in Berlin last September. And I wanted to outline only 2 of the concepts, the many that are presented at these conferences. And maybe to get a big picture, we can classify all concepts. So there are soft wing concepts. There's also some soft wing concepts investigated in Italy. And then there are the fixed wing concepts, which have basically airplanes. What they all have is something like a wing and a tether. That's it. And I want to outline these 2, the ground-based generation and the onboard generation that I mentioned before, and show what companies are pursuing this. So the first one is a company in the Netherlands, Ampix Power. So they build these little planes. They have this cycle that I've just shown, and that's what they want to build. And they are about 10 permanent people now. It's a startup at TU Delft, and they are financed by venture capital. So we have a joint PhD student to start very soon. So it's a very research-intensive company as well. So to get you an idea of how that looks in practice, just show very short. Here you have this winch. There's the airplane, there's a tether, and the plane makes some loops, which means it flies crosswind. And there's an enormous tension on this line, and it's going actually out and in order to produce power. Actually now it's going out, and later it will go in. I decided that this could be better seen from the point of view of the airplane. So here's how they start. So it's the same company. There is a tether. It's pulling the plane up. And now the camera is at the end of this airplane. And it's going pretty fast into power production. So you see at the bottom the Netherlands at this season, I think. And you see that the plane is making loops. So it's turning and producing power all the time. You see a little bit of motion here, so that's how such a plane is controlled, like any airplane. It's still producing power, it's very fast, and now it starts to slow down and go into a retraction phase. So now it's actually flying towards the attachment point and losing a bit of power. And now it's already that's already finished. That was very fast, and now it's producing power again. So this was the first company I wanted to present. And the other concept, which is also quite exciting, I find, is these fixed wings with onboard power generation. So this is a startup that is existing since 2006. It's in California. They have about 15 people working on it. They built these fixed wings with onboard generation. That means little air turbines on board. But recently they were bought by Google X. That's this secret part of Google which invests into new technology like self-driving cars and the Google Glass and such things. And now they also bought this company, which made this company very happy because they don't have to think about investment anymore. So now what they are doing is they built a plane which has a lot of propellers, at least 4, and then they have a cable here and they fly circles. And so this is one of these circles with many pictures over with an overlay. And here's a little bit of a video which shows how this system works. And what is interesting here is in particular how elegant you can start these things. So this is a 30 kilowatt machine, a small one that was already built a few years ago. Here you see it's hanging actually inside a birch. This is the control room. And then the propellers start to spin, and there are 4 of them. And so they basically lift this airplane into the sky. It's just hanging on its own propellers. That's it, like a helicopter. So it feels like as if there would be someone in the sky holding it. And then it goes into the orbit where it starts to produce power. And this is starting now. It's driven by the wind, and the propellers will now start to generate power. So they are not used as lifting helicopter wings anymore, but now they're actually braking the plane and producing a lot of power, which is then harvested at the ground and sent through the tether to the ground. So here you see some pictures, and I think I want to go on. So this gave a rough idea that this is a real technology, it's existing. But there are lots of questions which you can ask, and one of them is how would we optimally fly these wings? I said already that rolling out with 1/3 of the wind speed is good, but how high should we fly? How long should the tether be? Which angle should it have? How thick should the tether be? And so all these questions can be answered by optimization. And this is what we focus on in Leuven and Freiburg. So this is an ERC project which funds about 6 people, and we focus on computer simulations and optimization. And we also built a small prototype because my experience is that even the most mathematical people get excited and more productive if they see the real prototype where they should validate their models and test things. But I should also say that it's eating a lot of resources, which we would otherwise have to do brainy stuff. Anyway, what we are interested in are computer simulation models. I will not go into details, but just the model class that we use is the same, you could say, that you use in flight simulators. It's complicated nonlinear differential algebraic equations models of index 3, but you can treat them very efficiently nowadays and even optimize in a very short time. So we don't only simulate, but we also optimize. And so this optimization is what I find interesting and which I want to share also with the non-mathematical people here in the audience. And so I skip completely any description of the optimization problem, but I just formulate in words what we want to do. This is actually an optimization algorithm at work, which tries to find an optimal orbit of these orbits that we have seen for the company MPX Power. You have seen there was this orbit where you fly first loops. So this is the result of an optimization. You fly loops which produce power, and then you fly back and you don't lose too much power, hopefully. And what is interesting about this problem is that we can formulate basically our differential equations. We can formulate the only objective, and the objective is just maximize the power production. Power is lost in this phase, but it's produced in this phase. So it wants to stay as long as possible in this phase and to be very quickly in this phase and have this, it's actually what we thought before, what the engineers also fly, is also coming out from optimization. I show this again. Just to get this, so there was no guess, so we just say fly somehow, and then the optimizer chooses several thousands of variables in order to find the optimal solution, and this is something that you could afterwards fly. As I said, we also want to build such a thing, and we actually want to demonstrate that you can start these apparatuses not with a winch, but also with a rotation. And so what we want to demonstrate is actually that you could start with a simple a principle which is similar to what we have seen here. Then we work on computer-based control, where you have always a computer model running inside the computer, which predicts and allows you to optimize your system all the time. And our vision at the end is that we have such a little carousel here that flies in a starting orbit, just circles, and that then we make a plan of how we get into these power generation orbits. This is a physical simulation, but it's not a reality. You fly with this airplane along this pre-computed path, which is looking very complicated. It's a very nonlinear system, of course. The wind gets stronger high up, and then you transition into such a power orbit that we have seen before. So that's the vision that we want to realize. So to come from this little apparatus for starting up to a gigantic wind turbine, so to say. I think I need to come to the end, and that's also where I plan to stop. I just, instead of having some conclusions in words, I just want you to keep this message home. What we want to do is, our vision in this community is to replace tons of steel and concrete for these already quite efficient windmills by just a tether and a lot of intelligence and intelligent control. Thank you very much.